I'm Sam Kiley in Ukraine, and this is CNN.
Emotional aftershocks felt across America after the Supreme Court rules women no longer have a constitutional right to an abortion.
Been fighting my entire adult life for this day. We are dancing on the grave of Roe versus Wade.
Here we are outside of the very last standing abortion clinic in the state of Mississippi.
10 states across the country effectively banning abortion.
Protests in other cities turning violent.
Bipartisan action on the issues of guns. Congress passing that bill exactly 1 month to the day of that horrific massacre that occurred in Uvalde, Texas.
This bill doesn't do everything I want. It does include actions I've long called for that are going to save lives.
The Pride Parade in Oslo canceled after a shooting near a gay bar killed at least 2 people and hurt 8 others. I'm Pamela Brown in Washington. You are in the CNN Newsroom. Angst and euphoria as a divided nation reacts to the Supreme Court's most life-changing ruling in decades. Today, protests have spilled across the country, including outside the Supreme Court, one day after 5 justices overturned the landmark Roe v. Wade decision after nearly 50 years. American women no longer have a constitutional right to an abortion, and 26 states are expected to enact laws banning abortion. For opponents of abortion rights and many conservatives, it is a breathtaking victory decades in the making and seemed completely out of reach just a few years ago. CNN correspondents are scattered across the country following the ripple effects of the court's historic ruling. I want to begin with Joe Johns outside the Supreme Court. So what is the scene like there right now, Joe?
Well, just take a look, Pamela. This is outside the Supreme Court, and what we're seeing is anger, outrage, fear about the future after the court overturned Roe versus Wade. Take a look. A large crowd has gathered here almost all afternoon. It's almost over, but we've just seen a lot of people coming in, and you look at the signs, you can tell virtually all of these people in front of us are abortion rights supporters. Now, there have been some opponents of abortion rights here on the fringes mostly, which has led to some confrontation, some yelling, shouting, cursing, and even reportedly police having to intervene here and there. Speakers as well have admonished the crowd that this is supposed to be a peaceful rally here in front of the U.S. Supreme Court.
I'm Nadia Romero in Jackson, Mississippi, outside of the last abortion clinic still open in the state. The abortion provider tells me that he's doing abortions all throughout the day. They started letting in patients long before the opening hours, and they've remained past hours to allow those women to come in and get access to health care. You can see behind me that there are still protesters that are out here, anti-abortion protesters who've been trying to convince women not to come into the clinic. Here in the state of Mississippi, there's still about 10 days or so during that certification process before abortions must stop in this state, and that's why this clinic has extended their hours.
I'm Camila Bernal in Los Angeles, where a group of protesters has been gathered throughout the day. They've been marching. They have been demanding abortion rights, not just for people here in California. They understand that abortions are protected in this state, but they say they stand with women in so many other states where abortion is not going to be an option. Some of the protesters I talked to have told me they're frustrated and they're angry. I had one woman who shared her story with me. She had an abortion, and she told me that she did not regret it, that she was very happy about having that abortion. And she says now she's focused and donating to organizations that will help women come to California if they need an abortion. Right now, they're all sharing their stories and then chanting and supporting the many members of the community that have come out here today. There are a number of groups scattered throughout downtown Los Angeles. We have been marching. We're back in front of City Hall, and this group continues to be out here. They say they want more and more people to come and show their support and show their frustration because they are demanding change. Pam.
All right, Camila, Nadia, Joe, thank you all. An Ohio state lawmaker is once again sharing her own personal story of abortion. Teresa Fetter wrote in a 2015 Time magazine article that during debate on Ohio's so-called heartbeat law, quote, without having planned to speak out beforehand, I made it known I had been a victim of rape and underwent an abortion while serving in the military. Teresa Fetter is now a state senator, and she joins me now live. So as you told your colleagues, you were the victim of rape, you had an abortion, you have called the Supreme Court decision the largest reversal of women's personal privacy rights in U.S. history. How will this decision play out in Ohio?
Well, thank you very much for having me on. And I'm just one of the many, many stories throughout America who lived that experience. And yesterday we woke up with our reproductive freedom. 10:15, we lost it. And in Ohio, by the end of the day, as I was standing with a rally and protesters in Toledo, about 2,000 people, we lost our right to have an abortion when the AG supported DeWine's effort to put in the heartbeat bill, which means that if there is a fetal presence at 6 weeks, whether rape or incest is involved, you cannot get an abortion. And so we have these draconian bills now being enacted. Just like the nation, Ohioans do not support losing our personal freedoms, privacy, and reproductive choice for women especially. So, this is heart-wrenching, and I go back to 1973 in high school. In 1974, I graduated. We had this right, and it is a complete nightmare. I don't believe our country is ready for the all unintended consequences, extreme issues that women have to face with their reproductive health. And this is going to be something that we have to translate into the voting booth and putting new elected leaders who respond to the will of the people, not politics and extreme ideology.
The reality is, as you noted, Ohio is expected to reinstate its heartbeat law that was passed in 2019. What are you going to do as a member of the state Senate to ensure the women who cannot get the abortions that they would have wanted have the resources that they need?
Well, just like the Underground Railroad worked before the Civil War, during the Civil War. I live in Toledo, Ohio, which is on the border of Michigan, and as we're trying to find our way through our opportunity and our right to have reproductive freedom, we're going to figure this out. Imagine fathers and their daughter's life is on the line. God forbid she was raped, and you don't have any choice unless you have resources to go to another state. This is just like the Underground Railroad system we're going to have to set up until we have our voices heard and representatives who represent Americans, not extreme, party issues. So a lot of things contribute to this. In Ohio, the gerrymandered districts, we are voting on unconstitutional gerrymandered districts right now because the Republican supermajority want to hoard power and continue gerrymandering to continue that power and put in extreme laws that Ohioans do not want. And a lot of this is also surrounding around the issue of dark money coming into campaigns. So there's a lot of work ahead. And we need to tell all the women in Ohio, we're not going to take this sitting down. We're going to rally our votes, make sure everyone in our family and our friends are ready to vote, registered, and constantly check, because in Ohio Republicans purge our votes all the time. So this is just more effort to win in the ballot box and get that done.
I'm not sure what you mean about Republicans purging the votes, but I do want to focus on abortions, on this issue in the wake of this historic decision by the Supreme Court. Yesterday, another Republican bill in the Ohio State House is HB 598. That bill would effectively ban abortions in Ohio and make it a felony for doctors to perform abortions. Governor DeWine has said that he would sign that bill. Do Democrats in your state have a way to block that from happening?
Well, because Republicans are in the supermajority, the answer to that is no. So we continue to rally our voices to be heard, people to come, put the political pressure. This is going to be an ongoing effort to really take back our state house and our representation for Ohioans. And that's going to mean we're going to have to get people elected, go vote, make sure they're registered to vote, and turn this around. But it's going to be tough. It is going to be tough, but the people show up with rallies, protests throughout Ohio, but Republicans will not listen.
I want to ask you before we let you go, we know that outlawing abortion doesn't end abortions. How worried are you that women will increasingly turn to dangerous means to end pregnancies? And I'm curious about you and your own personal experience, what you would have done had you not had access to abortion after being raped.
Well, I've thought about that, and especially sitting as a legislator for 22 years, watching these bills continually go through the state house where majority of the women want their reproductive freedom. We're just going to have to continue to fight this effort. I wouldn't have been a legislator if I wouldn't have had the choices that I had. And I'm the lead individual as a legislator that fought against human trafficking. And I cannot imagine how many women are not going to be there in the future because they didn't have their reproductive freedom. They didn't have their privacy rights respected as a member and citizen of this nation. So there are a lot of consequences, but we're going to pull together and try to help our sisters, the sisterhood, pull through. There are recourses in the future, and we must start today to make sure we impact that in Ohio, August 2nd and November 8th. So we'll continue to do that and rally and just stand. If we need a constitutional amendment, I'm all there. I will help get that passed.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ohio State Senator Teresa Feder.
My pleasure.
And coming up, we were going to talk with a woman who calls herself unapologetically pro-life and part of the post-Roe generation. Also ahead tonight, for the first time in decades, new major federal gun safety legislation is signed into law. But is it enough? I'm going to talk to school shooting survivor David Hogg about that.
The ever-changing weather around the world. Ever-diverse terrain and roads across the world. With Kumho Tire that has conquered all. There is no road you cannot go. Go with Kumho. Kumho Tire.
Summer in Abu Dhabi. It's everything you want, but so much more than you'd expect. It's relaxing days at the pool, in water as chilled as your drink. It's bonding with family, but upside down. And even more so, it's burning rubber on an F1 racetrack, roller coasters breaking records. It's seizing the day or owning the night. It's literally drinking 23 karat gold. It's uniquely designed to make it the summer of your dreams. Whew. Abu Dhabi has everything you need to summer like you mean it.
Anti-abortion activists are celebrating the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, and that includes our next guest. Kristen Hawkins is president of Students for Life of America. The group is fighting to abolish abortion in the United States. Hi, Kristen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
There have been people working towards this decision for around 50 years. You have been working on this personally for 15 years. Is your fight done?
Absolutely not. In fact, this is a heady responsibility to say that we're the first post-Roe generation. Today we were knocking on doors in suburban Maryland, ensuring that every woman that we meet knows she doesn't stand alone in a post-Roe America. So we have a lot of work still to do.
In what way?
We have to work, obviously, to protect women and children from dangerous chemical abortion pills that, President Biden has promised to try to make them over the counter.
The FDA has said they are safe and effective, as you heard the Attorney
Yes,
General
and over
say.
24 women have died that we know of, and we don't have a national abortion reporting law on that.
Direct evidence connecting them.
Yes, absolutely. But we also have to do a better job of promoting nonviolent resources. The fact that there's 3,400 pregnancy centers and maternity homes that have been operating in communities for decades that vastly outnumber abortion facilities in our neighborhoods. But sadly, nearly 73% of Americans that we meet do not even know that these resources exist. And so that's really been my challenge to those of us who are pro-life right now in this moment of getting our voices out there, promoting websites like standingwithyou.org and other places where women can go and families can go and get support and services.
Right, because as you well know, economists are now predicting that child poverty, the rate of that is going to go up. Many of these states that are now banning abortion do not have paid family leave. They do not have the extended Medicaid for after giving, women who give birth. So if you could explain a little bit more about how you're going to fight for these disadvantaged women who wanted to get an abortion, they couldn't because of the state they live in, and their children who are growing up in poverty.
Well, we've been fighting for these women and their families for 50 years. It's in fact the abortion industry and what we hear on campuses all the time that tells women that abortion is a simple solution to all their problems. When in fact we believe in helping those who suffer, not eliminating somebody who may potentially suffer. And I think you help suffering, you help alleviate the suffering. You don't say, well, we're going to solve that by just prescribing abortion, because abortion doesn't end poverty. Abortion doesn't take her out of that abusive relationship that she finds herself in. That's harder work. That's walking alongside someone and seeking social justice with that person. And that's what we've been doing through the Pregnancy Center movement for nearly 50 years.
But what if, well, first of all, I hear what you're saying, but the reality is, I think it's nearly half 500,000 kids end up in foster care. Now, I don't know how many of those were kids that, the mother wanted to abort and came from a disadvantaged home. But the reality is you say that you're working on this, but so many kids still end up abused, neglect in the broken foster care system. And the reality is the governments in these states do not have the resources on the books, such as paid family leave, such as the extended Medicaid, to help with these situations.
We can definitely talk about those policies, but the question is the solution to children in foster care to kill them? No one would argue in our society that because a child's in foster care, therefore their life is unworthy of living. And that's the point that we're making in the pro-life movement every single day when we argue for protection at conception. That just because someone may suffer in their life, it doesn't mean we should snuff them out of existence, that we should violently end their life when they've done nothing wrong. And I think that's the important part to start the conversation.
And I want to get to that because you bring up two important points, your view that life begins at conception, but also your view that even bans like in Missouri, which bans abortion even in the case of rape or incest, that you support that. So under those laws, a 12-year-old could be raped and still be forced to carry that baby to term. Is that what you want? Is that the kind of thing you support?
I absolutely don't want 12-year-olds to be raped.
Right, but
and I
that
don't
happens.
want 12-year-olds
Unfortunately,
to
that's
be
a reality of the world we live in.
Absolutely. We definitely see these tragedies, and I think we need to do a better job in enforcing penalties on these people who commit heinous crimes.
But do you think the 12-year-old should carry that?
But I don't believe in discrimination against a human being based on the circumstances of their conception, because we don't issue birth certificates in our nation and give gold stars or silver stars as to how you were conceived. We say say, no, you are a human being with rights and you should be protected.
So what
and
I hear you saying
that's what we believe as a movement. And I actually think you should speak with folks like my friend Ryan Baumberger, who was actually conceived in rape, whose mother made a courageous decision to place him with an adoptive family, and talk with the tens of thousands of Americans who are living today, who have families, who were conceived in sexual assault. That every single time we talk about abortion in America, we bring these human beings up as if their lives don't matter and they don't have value. And I simply reject that.
No, and that's not what we're saying. The question was about, should a 12-year-old carry a baby to term if that 12-year-old was raped? Clearly you think, yes, that is the case. And we have talked to many people who were born even though their mother was raped, or even though their mother considered having an abortion and chose not to. We've talked to people all across the spectrum. But you are arguing that your Catholic faith dictates that the life begins at the moment of conception. There's a synagogue in Florida that has filed suit claiming that in Jewish law, abortion is required if necessary to protect the health, mental, or physical well-being of the woman. Why should your religious beliefs trump theirs?
It's not my faith that tells me that life begins at conception. It's science.
Well, there's plenty of scientists, as you know.
96% of biologists agree that the moment of conception, a unique human life comes into existence. There's no other moment when that DNA code. Where are you getting
the 96% of biologists? Where does that come from specifically?
That's a study from Chicago, University of Chicago.
Okay,
but
my producer will look that up because I've read many opinions preparing for this segment of doctor. I just want to be clear with our viewers so
But that's science. You can debate whether or not that human life has value. My faith tells me that human life has value,
scientists.
and that faith tells me that human life should be protected. But science tells us at the moment of conception, when egg and sperm unite, a unique genetic code comes into existence that's never existed before and will never exist again. That is, in fact, the moment when a human being comes into existence. That is indisputable.
There's not a consensus among scientists. There is absolutely not.
Well, they should be scientists if there's not a consensus.
Well, and let me walk you through what many scientists have said. I've read all sides of it today.
Sure.
I've read from various scientists. First of all, there is a general view that a baby, a fetus, reaches viability between, I believe, it is 24 to 28 weeks in the womb.
Right.
There is a view that when the egg it meets the sperm and it becomes an embryo, that it is just a cluster of cells. That it is not
just a cluster of cells. What makes me different?
I know,
than
and I've heard
embryo?
you say that, but I'll tell you right now. So what about it? And this is, I am not taking a position, but I like to challenge and test
this is fun.
views. Yeah, exactly. I think that
I like having this discussion. This is important.
So if a woman goes in, she can't get pregnant on her own. So in a lab, they have to take, they have to do it scientifically. In a lab, they have to put the egg and the sperm together to create an embryo. In the process of trying to get this woman pregnant, a doctor destroys the embryos because that's just what happens. Is that doctor then a murderer?
Yes, the doctor is ending human life. We don't define it as
trying to get a woman
in our
pregnant,
code, but that is ending human life.
So IVF clinics should be banned.
It depends on the procedure that is used in IVF.
But sometimes that's just what happens.
But there's also the question of intentionality as well.
I'm not saying.
I had a question posed to me recently on campus where someone said, well, if a woman's having a miscarriage, do you consider her being a murderer? Absolutely not. That's something that is unintended and is sad. And just because if a woman may be at risk for miscarriage, we don't consider her a murderer because she has an unfortunate situation.
That wasn't my question. And I see what you're saying, but I'm talking about a doctor who is trying to help a woman get pregnant, and through the process, embryos have to be destroyed. That doctor is a murderer, even though
no embryos should have to ever be destroyed in IVF.
So, okay, well, it does happen. That's just the bottom line. And also there are so many embryos frozen as well that these IVF clinics oversee. So what about that?
And I think that's what we've been talking about, intentionality. I would say that when we talk about pro-life laws, this isn't even discussed. So when we're talking about what's next in a post-Roe America, the discussion of IVF isn't even on the table. We're talking about ending human life intentionally, dismembering children who have limbs, whose arms and legs have to be removed from a woman's body and put back together. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about seeking laws to protect women against the predatory abortion facility.
What about the women who and you know this will happen because it has historically, women who are in states where abortion is now outlawed, how worried are you that they will turn to an increasingly dangerous means to end their pregnancies?
Yeah, we don't want any women to die. That's why we're pro-life. I'm actually very concerned why the Biden administration has rushed through these dangerous chemical abortion pills, which lead to injury,
The FDA
infertility,
says they
and
are
death.
safe and effective. The FDA says they are safe and effective.
Yes, but they've also killed women. 24 women have died. 24 women have died.
That I'm aware of, there is direct causal link, evidence, and my producer is looking this up, between the pill that the FDA has said is safe and effective for abortions and killing a woman.
You can talk to the family members. There's a gentleman who speaks openly in the state of California about his daughter who died taking these chemical abortion pills. We know, even though we don't have a national abortion reporting law, 24 women have died. And I would actually ask you, why is it on Twitter that abortion activists right now are posting homemade do-it-yourself abortions, dangerous chemicals that they're telling women to take? That's not the pro-life movement doing that. We're saying, how can we help you? How can we support you? How can we alleviate the crisis that you find yourself in without ingesting dangerous chemicals that are going to kill your child and possibly kill you? That's not on the pro-life movement. That is on abortion activists right now.
Well, I think abortion activists would say they don't want women taking dangerous chemicals either. I have
But
yet
they're
to hear
putting
that
the cocktails on Twitter.
Look, there's a lot of crazy stuff on Twitter. I don't think that that is what a majority of abortion
Vox and
activists would say.
other pro-abortion news outlets are actually publishing those articles right now, and I think that's a very dangerous situation.
Certainly
for
not
women.
something that we endorse, and that is something that you have brought up, not something that I brought up to you. But I appreciate this fulsome discussion, Kristen Hawkins. I think it's so important for us to see all sides of this, and
I'd love
we
to talk about
appreciate
it further.
Yeah, we'll have you back on for sure. Thank you very much. Well, President Biden today signed into law the first new federal gun reform bill in decades, but it comes as the Supreme Court just made it easier for Americans to carry guns in public. Up next, March for Our Lives co-founder David Hogg joins me live. We're going to discuss the back and forth over guns in America.
I'm Sam Kiley in Ukraine, and this is CNN.
I always believe in karma. I believe that doing the right thing will always end up to making us even more money. Our goal is to shape a better and more sustainable food future by investing in early stage transformative technology startups to address the challenges that the food supply chain that we're facing. So we have been backing alternative protein solutions in many different forms, from the cell culture meat, fermentation-based protein, plant-based meat, plant-based dairy. First, you need to make those meatless food really tasty. And second layer is it also needs to taste like meat. So we largely look at precision agriculture. We're looking at ag-drone company, ag robotics that can help the small farmers to make smarter decisions on growing their crops to provide a better and more sustainable impact on the environment.
I want this show, One World, to be a place where people watching from all corners of the globe can understand why what happens in Africa has a huge impact on all of our lives in ways we might never even know. Because of my background, I am well aware of the vibrancy of this continent, and I want to show that to the world. People of my continent do deserve to be heard. We are rich in ways beyond the soil beneath our feet.
One World with Zain Asher, weeknights on CNN.
World with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Well, this morning, President Biden signed historic federal gun safety legislation into law, and it addresses one of the most contentious issues in the nation and is the first major gun reform to pass through Congress in decades. The bill came together in the wake of mass shootings in Uvalde and in Buffalo, and it got support from both sides of the aisle. But the president acknowledged it falls short of what he and the Democrats had hoped.
Well, this bill doesn't do everything I want. It does include actions I've long called for that are going to save lives. It funds crisis intervention, including red flag laws. It keeps guns out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves and to others. And it finally closes what is known as the boyfriend loophole. So if you assault your boyfriend or girlfriend, you can't buy a gun or own a gun.
And after signing the bill, Biden said, God willing, it's going to save a lot of lives. But even as this historic legislation is signed into law, America is dealing with a severe case of whiplash over gun laws. On Thursday, the Supreme Court voted 6-3 to strike down a century-old gun law in New York that restricted concealed carry. State lawmakers are scrambling to respond.
I can't emphasize enough how disastrous this Supreme Court decision is. We do still have some options, but people should be worried about the future of keeping guns off of our streets.
But even in one of America's most liberal cities, some New Yorkers look forward to carrying a gun.
Absolutely, especially because I am qualified to do that and I am trained to do that, and I would feel much safer.
Joining me to discuss March for Our Lives co-founder David Hogg. David, you have said the Supreme Court made a radical decision by overturning this New York gun law. Explain what you mean.
Yeah, this was not a conservative decision. This was an extremist decision. This decision went against over 200 years of jurisprudence that had affirmed time and time again that the Second Amendment is talking about a well-regulated militia in the first place. This is not true Second Amendment supporters like my father, true people who are responsible gun owners, want responsible gun ownership to be mandatory, not voluntary. This was not a law that was preventing an enormous amount of people from being able to protect themselves. This was a law that put in common sense measures that have been in place for over 100 years to help protect people. This law makes it easier for bad guys to get guns and have guns almost anywhere that they want, or this decision rather. And I think the important thing to remember is that Americans widely agree, all of us agree, that we all want gun safety, we all want peace, we want our families to be safe in their communities, and we know from countries around the world that one of the best ways to do that is to make it harder for the bad guys to get guns in the first place.
So I'm wondering, given that, but given also what happened with President Biden signing this gun bill today, do you feel more or less hopeful?
Ultimately, I know that we're going to outlive everybody on the Supreme Court. I'm 22 years old, so I feel hopeful in the long term. I just know that we need to start doing the work now. I think of the work that was done by the Federalist Society to bring us here, a group of conservative extremist law students who politicized our court and are actively now destroying our country because they enabled it so that there's essentially one organization that all Supreme Court justices need to be checked off by for the Senate to confirm them. And that honestly gives me hope in a weird way, because I know that even though I vehemently disagree with the politicization of the court that the Federalist Society has brought and the destruction it is bringing to our country, it shows that student activism can work in a horrifying way. But we can work now as young people at universities like my own, Harvard, and others across the country, to put in the work now so that 50 years from now, we aren't dealing with the same ramifications of this decision. Not to mention, we just got the first gun law passed in my lifetime at the federal level. I was born a year after Columbine. This is the first gun law at the federal level in nearly 30 years. And it was Democrats and Republicans that worked together on it. I don't think it's enough. It's not going to stop every shooting. But even if we stop one Parkland from happening, that's progress.
David Hogg, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Well, now that the Supreme Court has overturned federal protection on abortion, things can get so confusing. CNN legal analyst Lonnie Coombs joins me next to explain the legal side of it all.
Heard it all before, but have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports, and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Weeknights on CNN.
When we decide we want to rise up and do something, when we come to connect with and care about each other and think, now I want to do something about what's happening with them and human trafficking around the world. My name is Sarah Davison Tracy. I'm an author, and I just published a book called No Longer Untouchable, a story of human trafficking, heroism, and hope. I wrote the book over the last 7 years in collaboration with 5 young women, 4 of whom were trafficked out of Nepal into India. Devi Sarahana Bhatti is one of our 5 storytellers. She has been a leader. She has been a visionary for this book, but also for her people in Nepal. I have 1 brother and 5 sisters. One sister, she was sold out into brothels in India when she was very little. So it was very long time, my parents and we were looking for her. But there was a big challenge for us how to rescue her, how to, get her back to Nepal. I wrote this book with the hope and the dream that these stories would elevate these young women's voices and would bring freedom to the many, many millions who are not yet free.
World Sport.
World Sport. For World Sport, I'm Coy Wyatt.
I'm Amanda Davis.
I'm Andy Scholes.
I'm Don Riddell.
I'm Alex Thomas. I'm Patrick Snell. And this
is CNN.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over on that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessments. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces. I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on. No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered. There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Abortion rights activists continue to protest outside the Supreme Court and across the country, like in Dallas. Texas is among the states with abortion bans triggered by the Supreme Court decision. It was to be implemented 30 days later, but the Texas Attorney General said local prosecutors may start enforcing an abortion ban passed before Friday's ruling. CNN legal analyst Lonnie Coombs joins me now. She is also a former LA County prosecutor. Lonnie, things are being handled differently state to state. Abortion is already banned in some states. Others have trigger laws that will take effect soon. Some states are likely to pass abortion bans in the near future. How complicated is this going to get when the rules differ across the country?
Yeah, Pam, great to be with you. Look, when people said when Roe versus Wade was wiped out, it turned us into two separate Americas, right? The states that are going to have abortion and the states that are going to ban it. But it's going to be much more complicated than that, because the states that choose to ban abortion, there's no limitations or guidelines as to how to do that. They can decide whatever they want to do. They can ban it after 15 weeks. They can ban abortion after the heartbeat. They can say there's exceptions to the mother's health or rape or incest, or they can say no abortion ever whatsoever. They have some of these cases, like you said, they had trigger laws ready to go as soon as Roe was wiped out. There's some other states like West Virginia have really old laws on the books. They have an 1882 law that banned abortion, made it a felony, a 10-year imprisoned felony. That was laying dormant during Roe versus Wade, but now that Roe is gone, that is the law that's in place, and they have to choose if they want to enforce it or change it. All the states are looking at their laws right now. Some are changing them, some are making them stronger than before, because with Roe gone, there are really no limitations as to how they enforce this abortion ban.
And to your point, in the states with the strictest laws, some third parties can now be at risk of being criminally charged if they help facilitate an abortion. So who's actually at risk of prosecution here? For example, look, some companies are offering to provide financial services to women seeking abortions in states that don't allow them. Family members could house a sister or cousin or child before the procedure.
Well, once you make abortion a crime, right, then aiding and abetting comes in. So anyone who assists in that crime, whether it be your mother or someone giving you a place to stay when you get the abortion or gives you a ride to the abortion clinic, they can all be prosecuted criminally for aiding and abetting. But it's not just criminal, Pam. We have civil actions going on as well. You know, all those employers that stood up and said, we're going to provide funding for our employees that need to go out of state to get an abortion. Well, Senator Marco Rubio just proposed federal legislation that would take tax breaks away from those employers who are trying to help their employees. Then Missouri just put in legislation that is saying they will allow their private citizens to sue fellow resident Missourians who go out of state to get these abortions, or the providers who provide them, sue civilly. Now, California Governor Newsom is saying to try and combat that, he is proposing legislation that makes California a safe haven, which would protect people who come to California from liability, whether they help them or whether they're providers. So you see this battle back and forth. For some of these states that have the ban in their own state, it's not just enough. They want to go beyond it. They want to stop the women from traveling outside of their state to get that abortion. And they're trying to go in all different directions, from going after the employers to going to people who give them rides. It really is going to be sort of the wild, wild west as far as how far they can push this until these cases are starting to be tested in the courts. And then we'll see how far they can actually go.
All right, I want to talk about the legality of using the FDA-approved abortion pills received in the mail for women in these states that ban abortion. And also, just to update our viewers, we were having a conversation previously with Kristen Hawkins, and she said 26 women had died after taking the pill. The FDA says 26 out of 4.9 million have had adverse effects after taking the pill. So clearly a statistical, very small number. But again, adverse effects, no direct link. Wanted to make that clearer to our viewers. Go ahead.
So the access to these pills is also crucial for these women that are in states that are banning abortion, correct? In fact, President Biden in his speech yesterday, he said, look, there's not much I can do, but there's two things I'm going to try and protect. That is, one, women being able to travel to out of state to get these abortions, and two, their ability to have access to these medicinal abortion pills, because that really is one way, an easy way for them to be able to get this treatment if they need it, if they're in a state where it is banned. So the government, President Biden is going to try and make sure that these are still accessible to women. But once again, this is another area that's up for grabs from these states that can put in these laws on the state level, and they'll have to be tested out in the courts.
Lonnie Coombs, thank you so much. We'll be right back.
When you grow more, you'll naturally have more to balance. With an expanding community of female entrepreneurs and 22% of working Africans starting businesses, support for new and growing enterprises across the continent has never been more important. Access Bank's digital loans have so far provided over 260 billion naira to upwards of 1.8 million customers and counting. Access, more than banking.
The Santos de Cartier. Now, the story goes that in early 20th century Paris, Louis Cartier, of the famous jewelry clan, had a Brazilian friend, Alberto Santos Dumont. Santos Dumont was one of the pioneers of aviation, but Louis Cartier often heard him complain about the fact that checking your time when you were flying one of the planes of those days, for which you needed both hands, was very difficult when all you have is a pocket watch. So after a while, Louis Cartier presents Santos Dumont with one of the first ever purpose-built wristwatches. And that watch has come down to us as the Santos de Cartier. If you look at this watch, with its squarish profiles, with its exposed screws, what you see are the skills of a master jeweler transferred to watchmaking.
We think of the metaverse as the next iteration of social media. And although there's only a few 100,000 people using it today, we anticipate that over the next few years, there's going to be millions of people joining these platforms and eventually billions of people using these platforms. This is not a fad. I mean, we can look at companies like Facebook doing the largest rebrand in history to Meta. We can look at companies like Samsung. Even the fashion brands like Gucci, Balenciaga, Adidas, and Nike are all establishing a presence there. And so what I would say to people that are still skeptical, say this is, maybe are the same type of people that were skeptical about social media and its impact on advertising, and maybe even people who are skeptical about the internet. My prediction is that within 24 months, every single large corporation is going to have to need a presence in the metaverse in the same way that they need a website.
This is the Innovation Center, right?
Indeed, where the magic happens. So what you're going to be going through now is an experience zone built with the end user's journey in mind. So
Akshay Chopra heads the Innovation Center at Visa's newly opened regional headquarters in Dubai.
I'm taking a seat. This is for me.
This is all yours.
Thank you very much.
Overseeing 90 markets from Europe to Asia.
You can take any surface like a bus stop, a metro station, turn it into a well-stocked retail store.
And let's just say, it's pretty cool, turning everyday bores and chores into a digital delight.
This is actually a really good first take, don't you think? Add to cart.
We want to make it easier for people to pay, get paid. We work with governments, with fintechs, with banks, with merchants of all shapes and sizes to help build payment experiences that are more convenient, more seamless, and more secure.
In a region where cash is king, Akshay says the global pandemic accelerated the move to digital.
Sunday, shockwaves as the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. A look at the controversial decision. When it comes to limits on abortion access, is America exceptional? Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sunday on CNN.
I'm Larry Medowo in Kigali, Rwanda, and this is CNN.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine.
Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore CNN.com/impact. Click to take action.
A broad majority of Americans say they support the right to legal abortion in the United States and did not want Roe versus Wade overturned. I want to bring in our senior data reporter, Harry Enton, joining us to run the numbers. So, Harry, there is still a big difference when you break things down by party, right?
Absolutely. Look, if you're a Democrat, you probably hate this opinion. There are some Democrats, a few who perhaps like it. If you're a Republican, you're probably ecstatic about it. But what I will note is whenever you can get 89% of Democrats to agree with something and 38% of Republicans, it's pretty popular. And you can see that right there at 62% overall agree with Roe v. Wade. And I must say, you know, I looked back at some controversial Supreme Court decisions over the years, or at least were seen as such at the time. You know, 2000, Gore v. Bush. You look at 2012, the health care law, the Supreme Court upholding it. This, to me, is the most unpopular Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade of any controversial decision that I can truly recall or look up in the polling.
Wow. There has been a lot of political fighting over filling Supreme Court seats in the past decade. How have people's thoughts about the court changed?
Well, the disapproval has gone up tremendously. I mean, you can see it here. You know, 52% of Americans in a recent Quinnipiac University poll said that they disapproved of the Supreme Court's job performance. That's up 15 points from just 2 years ago. And I will note that that 52% is the highest disapproval Quinnipiac has ever recorded. They've been asking this question since the mid-aughts, and this 52% is extremely high. And I would make the argument that the Supreme Court disapproval is high because they are making decisions that the American public, simply put, do not agree with, such as overturning Roe v. Wade.
And the court's supposed to look at the law, right? Not politics, but this data is showing that you have that people think that is not what's happening.
Yeah, they don't think that's what's happening. You know, what is the Supreme Court mainly motivated by? Politics or the law? You go back 4 years ago, the country was pretty split, right? 50% said politics, 42% said the law. Look at where we are now. That split has widened. 61% say politics, just 34% say the law. And I'd make the argument it'd be one thing if the Supreme Court was seen as political and making political decisions that the country agreed with. But they're not making decisions the country agrees with, and that, I think, is why their disapproval is going up.
So how does support for legal abortion break down by state?
Yeah, I think this is obviously the big question going forward, right? Because you had the legal analysts on before. This now goes back to the states. And so if you look essentially at an average of polls since 2012, you do see there are a number of states where opposition outruns support. It's mostly in the Southeast, but it is also in the Plain states. And this is where a lot of the states do, in fact, have those trigger laws that are going to, in fact, outlaw abortion. But I will also note we have a midterm election coming up in about 4.5 months, right? It's going to be very interesting to see Democratic candidates in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where the clear majority support legal abortion, whether they're going to run on that issue, because it's not just about federal elections, it's about state level elections as well. And I think there are going to be a lot of Democratic candidates for governor